It's a controlled leak of reality that most people are psychologically unprepared to hear. And if you're holding XRP right now without understanding this short-term setup, you are walking into a volatility trap that could shake out even the most diamond-handed believers. Because while the crowd is screaming moon and chanting Ripple wins, the smart money is quietly positioning for turbulence. And yes, this could mean more downside before the real move even begins. Let me be crystal clear from the start. This is not anti-XRP. This is pro-survival. And the reason this matters is because history shows that the most violent upside moves in crypto are almost always preceded by brutal, confidence-destroying pullbacks that feel engineered, coordinated, and personal. Ask yourself this: why would BlackRock, Fidelity, and sovereign-aligned capital want you comfortable before they accumulate? And why would the SEC suddenly go quiet while the IMF keeps publishing tokenization frameworks that suspiciously line up with Ripple's infrastructure? This is where things get uncomfortable, because XRP is not trading like a retail meme coin anymore. It's trading like an asset being prepared for a roll. And preparation phases are messy, deceptive, and ruthless. Right now, we're seeing price behavior that screams liquidity extraction, not weakness, but that doesn't mean your portfolio won't feel pain in the short term. Every time XRP approaches a key psychological level, volume thins, derivatives spike, and weak hands get baited into leverage. And that's when the rug pulls just enough to cause panic without breaking structure. And people ask, WTF just happened? This is why you need to hear this message before Twitter tells you after the fact. If you value real-time intelligence like this, do not forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications right now, because what's coming next will not be covered honestly by mainstream crypto media, and missing one update could cost you months of positioning. Understand this: downside does not mean failure, downside means setup, and the insiders know exactly how to weaponize fear. The question you must ask yourself is not whether XRP survives, but whether you are mentally prepared for the final shakeout that clears the board before regulation clarity, institutional onboarding, and narrative reversal collide. Stay locked in, because in the next part, I'm going to show you why the data, the institutions, and the so-called silence all point to a calculated short-term drop that most people will misinterpret as disaster. Now, pay attention, because this is where emotion has to be replaced with cold, institutional logic, and this is exactly where most retail investors fail, because when you strip away the hopium tweets and influencer thumbnails, the raw data is flashing warnings that insiders already understand. On-chain metrics show something most people are ignoring. Exchange inflows for XRP have been creeping up during relief rallies, not down, which historically signals distribution into strength, not accumulation at highs. And this is the same pattern we saw before previous controlled pullbacks that reset sentiment. Derivatives data is even more aggressive. Funding rates spike positive right before price stalls, meaning late longs are piling in with leverage at the worst possible time. And market makers love nothing more than punishing leverage because it creates forced selling. Ask yourself this: why would price be allowed to grind up cleanly when billions in open interest are sitting like a buffet waiting to be liquidated? This is not random. This is mechanical. Now zoom out to authority, because this is where credibility becomes unavoidable. The SEC may be quieter publicly, but enforcement does not move in headlines. It moves in timing. And historically, when regulatory pressure eases temporarily, markets misread it as relief when it is often the calm before structural repositioning. Meanwhile, the IMF has openly discussed cross-border settlement systems, liquidity hubs, and tokenized rails that align perfectly with Ripple's design, but notice how price does not reflect that optimism yet. That divergence is intentional. Institutions like BlackRock do not chase green candles, they manufacture red ones, because fear creates supply, and supply creates opportunity. Look at what happened with Bitcoin ETFs. Price chopped, retraced, frustrated everyone, and only then did the real trend emerge. XRP is not exempt from this playbook. In fact, it is more vulnerable to it because of its retail heavy holder base. Even banking-aligned entities, former central bankers, and World Economic Forum contributors have name-dropped Ripple in infrastructure conversations while XRP price remains suppressed, and that contradiction alone should tell you this market is not being allowed to run yet. This is why short-term downside is not bearish. It is strategic. The data says patience will be punished emotionally before it is rewarded financially, and only those who understand this phase will survive it without making catastrophic mistakes. And this is where the FUD starts to intensify on purpose because narratives are weapons, and in the next part I'm going to break down the specific catalysts that could trigger the next shakeout and exactly how to mentally defend against the fear campaigns that will follow. Here's where it gets truly critical. Because now we move from numbers to the narrative, and this is where the manipulators play their psychological games, crafting fear, uncertainty, and doubt to perfection. And XRP holders need to understand the precise mechanics of this operation to survive the next phase. First, consider the looming catalysts. SEC filings, court deadlines, and Ripple's own strategic announcements are all being timed in ways that maximize retail panic and minimize instant comprehension. Every subtle hint from regulatory authorities, every innocuous-sounding press release from Ripple is engineered to make uninformed traders overreact, selling into temporary chaos while institutions quietly absorb the market. Ask yourself, how many times have price spikes been followed by unexpected dips that wipe out thousands of traders in hours? This is not coincidence. It is classical liquidity hunting at work. Then there's the media angle. Mainstream outlets and crypto news aggregators love to scream XRP is stuck or failing to move whenever a minor retracement occurs, and retail investors who rely on these headlines panic sell exactly as designed. Meanwhile, the smart players, BlackRock, Fidelity, large hedge funds, are quietly stacking, using derivatives to create synthetic fear, and taking advantage of thin liquidity windows to extract maximum profit. Do you really think people like Gary Gensler or Christine Lagarde are making decisions without considering how it manipulates markets? Of course not. They are fully aware of the domino effects. Now, here's your defensive strategy. Emotional detachment is everything. Recognize that the charts will lie, the news will lie, and social media will amplify the wrong narrative. When XRP dips into its short-term support zones, this is not a signal to panic, it is a signal to observe, because those who can withstand the engineered fear will be positioned perfectly for the rebound. It's the classic shakeout before accumulation, a purge of weak hands so that the next major rally has a solid foundation. And remember, FUD is not accidental, it is surgical. Expect threads, tweets, and even YouTube videos questioning Ripple's fundamentals, XRP's utility, and regulatory outcomes. They are designed to bait the emotional investor into capitulation. Your job is to see through it, because the only people who benefit from mass panic are the very institutions you think are powerless. Understand this, the coming catalysts will hit hard. But those who recognize the signals, align their positions, and remain calm will survive the storm. And those who don't will learn the lesson the hard way. This sets the stage for the short-term price justification I'm about to explain, showing exactly why the next drop is logical, necessary, and designed, and why even after the decline, XRP's long-term trajectory remains intact. Now let's talk numbers, mechanics, and the brutal logic behind why XRP could see further downside in the short term, and why anyone ignoring this is gambling with fire. Look at the chart structure. XRP has repeatedly failed to break above critical resistance levels at key Fibonacci retracements and institutional supply zones, meaning every rally so far has been met with aggressive selling pressure from large holders who are using this moment to redistribute XRP into patient hands. This is classic accumulation disguised as weakness. Add to that the derivatives market, where open interest in XRP futures remains historically elevated, and funding rates are signaling leveraged longs are overextended. Every liquidation cascade you see is not random. It's precisely engineered to flush out weak positions, tighten liquidity, and create volatility that can be exploited by smart money. Think about it. BlackRock and Fidelity do not need to chase price. They create conditions where price comes to them. Now layer on regulatory uncertainty. Even minor statements from the SEC about digital asset definitions, or whispers from international regulators about cross-border settlements, create a temporary chilling effect, causing hesitant retail holders to panic. This is why short-term downside is not only probable, it is predictable, and anyone holding XRP without planning for this volatility is walking blind into a storm. The final warning is stark. Don't confuse this engineered pullback with a fundamental failure. Ripple's network growth, adoption in banking corridors, and XRP ledger upgrades remain intact and accelerating behind the scenes. But the market must shake out weak hands before these positives manifest in price. Prepare for shock because over the next days or weeks, we could see drops that trigger fear narratives across YouTube, Twitter, and crypto forums, while insiders quietly prepare for the next leg up. Price justification is clear. The market is compressing, leverage is peaking, liquidity is thinning, and regulatory ambiguity provides the perfect excuse for temporary declines. For those who understand the setup, this is a window of opportunity. For those who panic, it's a lesson in how retail psychology is preyed upon. The key takeaway: XRP's short-term downside is not a sign of failure. It is a setup, a cleansing of weak hands, and a strategic redistribution by institutional players who know the bigger picture that most retail investors will never see. Timing and patience are everything, and failing to recognize this phase could cost you more than just profits. It could cost you confidence in surviving the next critical market movements. Here's the conclusion, and this is where everything you've heard needs to be internalized, because if you miss this, you miss the lesson that separates the passive from the prepared. Respected investors, short-term downside in XRP is not your enemy. It is the market's way of compressing, testing, and redistributing, and every engineered dip you witness is a signal, not noise. If you panic, sell, or overreact, you are feeding the very system that seeks to exploit fear. But if you stay disciplined, recognize the data, anticipate the catalysts, and mentally prepare for FUD campaigns, you position yourself to benefit from the inevitable rebound that follows the shakeout. Remember, institutions like BlackRock, Fidelity, and other banking-aligned capital do not operate on hype. They operate on timing, liquidity, and human behavior, and XRP's current short-term volatility is a direct reflection of that invisible hand at work. So protect your position, sharpen your awareness, and understand that the temporary pain is a prelude to strategic advantage. This is the insider truth most retail investors will never see until it's too late. And now that you have it, the choice is yours. Panic and follow the herd, or stay disciplined, observe, and prepare for the opportunity hidden inside the chaos. This is XRP's short-term reality, harsh, urgent, and unavoidable. But the long-term trajectory is still alive for those who see beyond the fear.